This is part 2 of our series. We're calling this the Plan Your Kickoff Series. So the idea is that we're running short, very mini webinars from October through November, all around just key components of kickoff events. So thinking sales kickoffs, company-wide kickoffs, even company all-hands events, and just thinking about the core programming components. We're taking one topic each week for the next, we've got 5 more weeks left. So last week we discussed main stage presentations. So talking about kind of those big energy boosting presentations as part of your event, talking about the one-to-many communication component. And this week we're actually going to all the way to the opposite end of the spectrum and talking about personal group discussions and small group breakouts. So facilitating peer-to-peer collaboration, peer-to-peer discussions, and we'll share many examples of how we're seeing companies do that. In our experience, just seeing so many kickoff events, we found it has consistently been the highest rated portion of events when our customers collect NPS scores. So quick round of introductions because I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Lindsey Schiller. I'm the head of growth here at Philo, and I'm talking with Matt Compton, co-founder and CEO of Philo. Matt has such an interesting background because he's been in both the planner seat of kickoffs as a sales leader in his former roles, and now he's come on and helped so many companies plan and host their kickoffs. So Matt, so I don't butcher it, why don't you just give like a 30-second background of yourself so people kind of know where you're coming from?
Yeah, hey everybody, Matt Compton, co-founder of Philo. I am so excited for all of these discussions. Kickoffs are so near and dear to my heart simply because for probably half a decade before this, leading revenue operations and enablement teams at some pretty large technology companies, kickoffs were in my world. We planned, executed the kickoffs that were global events, big one time a year in person. And then now in Philo, being able to work with such amazing companies, everything from technology to construction in planning their kickoffs, it's just been a whole lot of fun. So looking forward to digging in.
Awesome. So yeah, as I said, we keep these kind of short and sweet and to the point. So let's kind of dive right in, Matt. And if you could talk about just like, why should people first even consider doing a small group discussion in their kickoff event? Like, shouldn't kickoff just be about like blasting some information out, some great music, some fun things? Why should we even consider like these focused group discussions?
Yeah, there's such an important part. And they were when you're in person. When you're in person, some of it happens naturally, right? So you kind of take that a little bit for granted, but there's some real key reasons why virtual, that you be incredibly thoughtful about these. I kind of summarize it into 3 core things. The first is interaction for attendees, giving them an opportunity to contribute, to interact, and to talk and collaborate with their peers. I've never been a part of any event, in person or virtual, where somebody came out and said, gosh, I wish there was just less interaction. I wish I had more of an opportunity to sit and watch. But we've heard a lot of times people come out and say, man, my only complaint about that was the breakouts and the interaction with my peers were way too short. Either it didn't happen, I wish there was an opportunity, or were too short. You know, we had 10-minute breakouts and they said I had to be back at an exact point of time, and we were just starting to get into the meaty part of the conversation. And they told us we had to get back into the room, right? And I could have talked in that for an hour. We see it in, as you said, how they rate the events. They're time and time again rated the top portion and the top sessions throughout any kickoffs or really any event. So the first is interaction. The second is real world applicability. So there's nothing against marketing and product teams, right? You need a core message. You need something that fits across the entire company. You need some standardization, but also standardization can be incredibly theoretical, where you get a message and that message is just theoretically supposed to apply to an entire market. That gets much more interesting when you apply a broader message meant for all of your customers or an entire market down to a single one, or a single specific problem inside of the company. So how do you get away from the theoretical and into the real world? And there's no better way of doing it than bringing practitioner sellers and having them talk and lead a discussion of their own about some specific scenario they're dealing with. And the third is connection. So connection and networking is something that you have to be really thoughtful about virtually. Very few people, I hate it, and most people don't like it, but I'm sure there's some people out there, I don't want to offend anybody, but most people don't like forced virtual networking, right? Speed networking. We're going to force people to jump in these rooms and just talk to one another, and there's not really a direction of what they're supposed to do. It's awkward, right? And you try, and there's some value to it, but it is awkward and it's uncomfortable. But giving somebody a purpose, a thing to talk about, to jump in and have that discussion, not only allows them to interact with one another and be interactive themselves, and not only gives them real world, but it's just an opportunity to connect with peers that they don't always talk to every single day. So there's a networking aspect to it as well.
Yeah, no, I really like about the connection and the networking and the interaction. I remember talking with Judy Reese of Reese McCann. She's an event planner that really focuses on this kind of concept. And she tells a great story about like the reason she would always go to in-person events wasn't necessarily to watch the person. It was to meet people. It was like to make the business connection or the work connection. It was a person that you chatted with between those sessions and those presentations. And so you just don't get that with virtual if you don't plan it in there thoughtfully in the programming. So love that. Let's dive into how can people actually do this? And I think examples are so helpful for other event planners, whether they're sales enablement or event marketers. What are sort of companies doing to help bring teams together or small group discussions or interaction?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, if you rewind back to middle of last year, all of us were novices at this, right? Not many people ran full kickoffs virtually. So we were all last year just thinking through, okay, let's try something and see what it works. And luckily we've had an opportunity to learn from many of our customers where we try to push them, but they definitely pull us along too. One of the best ones, we've got a case study out there on this is Yext. So what Yext did during their kickoff, they had a multi-day kickoff, and each day they had a session during the day where they had what they called deal rooms. So you had 9 deal rooms in each one of these sessions. They were fairly short. I think they were 45 minutes or so. And each session had an SDR, an account exec, a customer success person, maybe a services person, or some mix of those that were just there to talk about a specific customer, right? It could have been a brand new deal to say, hey, let's tell you about this big deal that we won, a new customer we brought on board. How did they find out about us? How did we have the initial connection? What problem were they having? How did we align our product and our services to solve that problem? How did we compete? Who are we competing against? And how did we compete? And then what were the steps? Like, how did we win? And what were the steps in order to get that done? It could have been an existing customer where they're talking about a challenging renewal that they were working through, or a customer who had a big problem, right? Solid customer, not at risk, but they had a core problem they brought to the company, and they rallied everybody together in order to solve it. And it's that real world applicability and talking about customers specifically that was super powerful. When they did the ratings, the ratings of that session were absolutely through the roof. They had I think it was around 9 deal rooms each time. People could select which one they wanted to attend. They weren't pre-assigned. If they jumped into one and didn't like it, they could always move around to another one. An amazing customer of ours, Anaplan, did something very, very similar. They didn't call it deal rooms. For them, they call them storytelling sessions, where, again, very, very similar around new customers, around existing customers, to just jump in and hear from their peers and interact and ask questions. Cox, a large enterprise customer of ours, just a great group of people. A slightly different event where Anaplan and Yext were large sales kickoff driven. It's sales and company kickoff. This one was a set of key executives around the organization. Cox is a gigantic enterprise. It was maybe 150 people. And they had a couple peer-led sessions during their leadership retreat. One was around functional leaders. So just being able to jump in and hear about what's going on in other functions. big things happening, challenges, what's going well, what's not going well. And then they also had another session that you could pick and choose around cross-organization or cross-functional initiatives. So people who were leading key initiatives and strategic initiatives across the company, you could learn what the initiative was, why it started, and what the plan was going forward, and then ask questions about how that applies to your area, your function, or your region. So that was a really good one as well. We've had a few customers who bring in partners to lead these. So especially when you have implementation partners, so having an implementation partner who, look, they may catch your new business and their job is to take what you sold and implement it. This could also just be an internal services team who is helping, but getting that context of once we sell the value of what we do, what's the experience like for the customer going through solving the actual problem using the software, helps in so many different ways, both on the partner and services side as well as on the sales side. And then, I mean, some of these have been led, just say sales engineer or SoulCon led, which are just demos, right? Jump into some more deep dive demos of parts of the product. Kinney Group was an amazing customer who, where theirs wasn't somebody just leading a discussion. They set up people solving problems during the event. So it was essentially in the form of a hackathon. I can't remember the word they used for it, but they had this mini hackathon. Each team had a set of time each day to jump in and work together to solve a problem or to bring a proposal to solve a problem back to the business at the end. All these were just the incredible in terms of what they got out of it.
Yeah. Awesome. So that was a lot. So just what I kind of heard the themes were, you could either do them education oriented. So having like a story room, deal room, one team educating. You could have them kind of task oriented, like getting them together to solve something. I heard kind of support oriented. So getting people together to like just support each other. Maybe you give them questions around a topic. And then that external kind of flavor as well.
Exactly.
Awesome. So we're diving down into more like logistical and nitty gritty. What would you say, like structurally, how should people set this up an event? Like just give a bunch of people breakout rooms? Like how do you coordinate a bunch of people going to breakouts or discussions?
Yeah, a couple of things I'll share before I dig in and give some tips that we've seen. First, for whatever reason, I understand it, but these tend to be pretty uncomfortable for the people planning the event. I think it's something about losing control and giving control up to other people to run and not knowing exactly how they're going to go. But they're actually really easy and really low risk. Again, I haven't seen a single event where they weren't the top rated session. And they can really lower your workload. Now, in order for that to happen, there's a few things to keep in mind. One, don't make these overly structured. Don't try to say, hey, everybody needs to fit into exactly this mold. Just say, what are we trying to accomplish? Who are the right people to lead sessions on what we're trying to accomplish? And then let them run. Let them structure it how they want to structure it. So that's the first piece. Give them a little direction, but then let them handle it however they want to. And if a session isn't what somebody wanted, they can always move on to another one. The second is give people enough time. Again, part of the uncomfortableness is like, okay, we're going to do breakouts, but I need these to just be 10 minutes because we're trying to shoehorn this into the agenda. This is an incredibly important part of the agenda. Make sure you give enough time for the interaction, not just for the content, people to be able to ask questions. Now that may be 30 minutes, that may be 45 minutes, that may be an hour. We try not to have sessions that go much over an hour in the virtual world, but anywhere in that 30 minutes to an hour is make sure you give people enough time. Make them interactive. So the best way we've seen these work, just use Zoom. Right? If 5 people show up or 300 people show up or 500 people show up, you can have everybody on video. Anybody can turn their video on at any point in time, audio, ask questions, interrupt. The best part of this is the interactivity. You also then don't have to worry about training all of your presenters on a new technology in order to use. So everybody has used it. It works. It's easy. Drive people to Zoom sessions and then just let them go and let them run. And the last one we've seen some people who let who have their attendees select ahead of time which one they want to attend and then lock them into what they selected. Still super valuable. We recommend against that. Let people choose. It can be 3 at a time, 9 at a time, but have a number of sessions going on at once. People have a preconceived notion of what they want to hear. They're going to jump in. Some of them, it may be exactly what they want to hear. Some of it may be, gosh, I was thinking this would really be more implementation oriented, so they can go and jump to another one. That's okay. Like, let them get to whatever's most valuable for them. They're going to engage more. They're going to ask more questions. And it's going to be more valuable for everybody. Also gives an opportunity for them to pull their peers in to say, hey, Lindsey, you really need to get over to this session. I'm hearing it. This is really good, right? And allows you to move over and something that's going to add the most value to you. So don't make them overly structured. Make sure they give them enough time. Make sure the technology is one that's interactive, and give people a choice. If you do that, it's actually really low amount of work and overhead, and it'll bring a ton of value.
Yeah, no, I was smiling during that because it reminded me how if you let people kind of freely choose what they're most interested in, it begins to mimic more and more the energy of an in-person event. So remember, Yext did this with their deal rooms, is that they just set up a bunch of rooms in Philo, each with the session, the topic, and a leader. And then people could navigate, and you would see how people were sort of navigating and shifting to sessions that were maybe more popular, which is exactly what would happen in person, right? Is people just kind of mill about and kind of go check out different talks. And then you see a crowd over there and you head over there, or you poke around. So I love mimicking that kind of in-person energy.
Exactly. And keep in mind, more popular doesn't always mean
Yeah.
better, right? Because sometimes a really intimate group of 5 people really passionate about a topic is, in many times, more valuable, well, way more valuable for those 5 people than having a session that's really popular where there's 100 people trying to vie for some time inside the session. Both are good and both are okay.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, we promised it would be short and sweet. So I think we should wrap it up here. Matt, any last tidbits or tips?
Well, let's see if there's any questions. I want to make sure if there are any. I do see one that is coming in around who should lead. Like, how do you find people in order to lead some of these sessions? That's a great question. We've talked about it a little bit. I think it's actually relating back to the session we did last week on Wednesday. I'll bring a framework that Brian Neal used, and I'm just going to shamelessly steal. And he talked about learn, do, and feel. Like, think about during these sessions, what do you want people to learn? What do you want people to do? And what do you want people to feel coming out of it? And then it doesn't have to be all 3 of those. It could just be 1, or it could be 2. But think about that, and then that'll guide you on who the right people are to lead it. Again, if you do say, we want people to get a more intimate knowledge of our product, great. Leverage your sales engineering team, your SoulCon team, and do deep dive demos around specific parts of the product. We want people to really understand what's happening cross-functionally, because virtually they're just not able to connect with people the way they did before. So people are losing visibility of what's happening across the organization. Find people leading those initiatives and ask them to just lead a 30-minute session. So it could be reps themselves, functional experts, services, partners are really good people to lean on. And one that we haven't, it's a little risky sometimes, and it's hard to get them sometimes, but if you can get customers to lead these themselves, if you can set up a few rooms where customers are there and you can just jump in and hear directly from a customer, the good, the bad, the ugly of their experience, those can be really powerful as well. So yeah, love that question coming in.
Cool. Yeah, almost like a customer advisory session or something like that.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for the people that joined. We'll, of course, shoot out this recording. They're online. You guys can find them. So find the whole series that we'll put together. And we will see anyone next week. We just do these weekly on Wednesdays going from mid-October all the way through November. So stay tuned for next week. I think we're going to be talking about team kickoffs and how to incorporate team alignment. So stay tuned for that. And thank you everyone so much for joining. Thanks, Matt.